Another thing that we're doing to really lead the way in this country is standing up on the issue of education. You look at what's going on in different states and even, we have challenges here, but the purpose of our school system is to educate kids, not to indoctrinate our kids. And that's why we fought ideology from being injected into the curriculum by doing things like banning critical race theory in our K through 12 schools. We're not going to teach kids to hate our country. We're not going to teach them to hate each other. We're not going to scapegoat some kid because 200 years ago someone that looked like him committed some type of evil offense. That is wrong. And they say you got to do some of this stuff to try to combat discrimination on the basis of race. No. If you want to stop discrimination on the basis of race, the best way to do that is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. And as much as we don't want some of the nonsense in, we have a responsibility to do a better job of saying what we're for in some of these instances. And I think you've had a generation that has turned its back on really solid education about the Constitution and American civic. We're putting that back in Florida in a really big way. We need to be able to teach students what it means to be an American. We need to be able to teach them the principles that the country was founded on, teach them about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and why so many people have fought and died for those ideas and our freedoms. And it's not just about telling that story, it's also about contrasting with others. So I've signed legislation making November 7th a day where school children will learn and the state as a whole will reflect on the victims of communist regimes throughout history. We're going to teach the truth about Marxism, Leninism. We also believe that, and my wife and I are sensitive to it just because we have a 5, 4, and 2-year-old at home, and you think about raising kids now, not that it was ever easy, but when I was growing up, there were just way less things that could really be bad in front of kids, it seemed like. Now, parents got to worry about all these different influences, and we just believe that as a parent, you should have the ability to send your kid to school. They should be able to watch cartoons, play with friends, just be kids without having some agenda shoved down their throat. And so we signed a bill called Parents' Rights in Education, which said, we are not going to be injecting things like gender ideology into our elementary schools. We're not going to be teaching some 6-year-old kid that they may have been born in the wrong body. That's not going to happen. We're not going to teach somebody that's 8 years old, so you have a girl that's maybe sports or something or playing with the boys. We're not going to say, oh, well, that must mean that you maybe are a boy. No, we're not going to do that. And so we're drawing a very clear line in the sand on that. They need to focus on traditional education, reading, writing, add, subtract, science, all those different things. And parents should have the right to send their kid knowing that that's going to be the focus. Look, it's not my cup of tea, but if you're a parent and you want to talk about gender ideology with your kid, okay, that's fine. But you don't have the right to impose that ideology on the rest of the families. And it is happening in other places around this country. Do never let the media tell you it's not. It absolutely is. That's why parents are going and they're fighting back because of what you see. But, it shows you how quickly things can go. 5 years ago even, this idea of gender ideology, you would assume you get that at a seminar at Berkeley or something. You wouldn't think you'd get it in kindergarten in a public school, but nevertheless, it's rare. So we stood, but here's the thing. That's common sense, and people have shown the vast, vast majority of people agree with that, certainly parents, but it was controversial when we were doing it. The left blew a gasket. The media got all upset. And we even had big corporations get involved and challenge us in terms of what we were doing. And we had one that you may have heard of that's got a little bit of foothold in Central Florida, Walt Disney Company. And, you know, the thing is, look, these companies, you know, they can virtue signal, they do all this stuff. I mean, I think it's a mistake, you know, but you're free to do it. So they came in, they were getting pressured to take a position. So they came in against the bill. They demagogued the bill. They were following the media, fake narratives. And people said, though, at the time, oh my gosh, you know, Disney is the 800-pound gorilla. They always get what they want in the state of Florida. If they come out against this, you know, there's no way, you know, that the governor is going to be able to go through with this. And so they were counting on that corporate pressure causing me to cave. Well, they counted wrong. We run this state based on the best interests of the people of the state of Florida. We do not subcontract out our leadership to woke corporations in California. And, you know, the thing is like, they were against it, but then when we signed it, they said, you know, it's our mission to see that parents' rights are repealed in Florida, and that they were threatening to litigate and do all this other stuff. And so, you know, I was just like, you know, you have the right to do some stuff, although I don't think it's good for the shareholders to be doing it, but that's fine. You do it. But you don't have a right to have the citizens of Florida subsidize your woke activism. And that's what was happening. Because since the 1960s, they've gotten massive amounts of subsidies and benefits. They have their own government in Central Florida. They have exemptions from laws that other companies have to follow, and they get really big tax breaks. So what we said is okay, you're going down this road that's not consistent with our values. We're not going to have you on a pedestal. And so we took action with the legislature. Because we did, Disney's not going to have its own government anymore. They're going to live under the same laws as everybody else, and they are going to pay their fair share of taxes in the state of Florida. We just want to do what's right. I mean, at the end of the day, we are going to stand on principle, and we're not afraid of anybody, no matter how powerful they may be. We also stood up to other companies and organizations when we took a stand in 2021 to protect women's sports in the state of Florida. Because you have this situation, you'll have someone compete on the men's swim team for 3 years and then switch to the women's team and then win the national women's championship? First of all, that is a farce. When the NCAA is crowning that swimmer the women's champion, they are asking us to be complicit in a lie, and we're not going to be complicit in a lie. But it also takes away opportunities from women athletes. You had the number 2 finisher in that 500-yard NCAA was actually a Florida resident, and she should have been the national champion. You also will have, you'll have high school track meets where there'll be like 8 sprinters make the finals, and 2 of them are biological men, and they win the top 2 slots, and then the other girls are 2 slots behind of where they would be. So we said we're going to take action. We're going to make sure in the state of Florida, girls and women athletes can participate and do so with integrity and with fairness. And we were told that if we did that, some companies may get upset, and the NCAA may even boycott Florida as a place to have events. And so all I said was, you're going to boycott Florida over this? Go ahead, make my day. I am not budging on this. We're not budging. We're going to do what's right. And guess what? Because we stood up for what's right, have they boycotted Florida? Of course not. But it's it's indicative of something that I call the woke mind virus when you see some of these issues. And some of it with the athletics, I think, is fundamentally unfair. There's also movements that I think are even more shocking, such as they're taking minors and they're doing things like sex change operations on minors, okay? And what they're doing is they'll do puberty blockers, they'll do double mastectomies on young girls, they will actually castrate young boys. And first of all, this is not based in solid science. European countries were starting to go down this road and they reversed course because they realized it wasn't justifiable. But that's what we're seeing. So in the state of Florida, first of all, too, kids go through a lot, okay? They have times. 80% of the dysphoria that is being identified resolves itself by the time they're 18. So we actually have people who are adults now who are testifying in favor of what Florida's trying to do. We're going to tell these doctors, you cannot perform. It's basically hacking off private parts. You're basically mutilating minors. You cannot do that and keep your medical license in the state of Florida. We're not going to let that happen. But so that's working through kind of our Board of Medicine. We're going to work with the legislature, do more next session. But we have adults who will testify in favor of the policy who got these operations when they were minors, and they now really, really regret it. And so we just got to be real here. In the state of Florida, a 15-year-old girl cannot go get a tattoo. So we're going to say that it's fine to cut off her breasts. Come on, that's not right. It's not acceptable. But it's an example. It's an example of woke ideology infecting medical practice. And so it has implications broader than just this one issue. So we're fighting all of this. All we're trying to do is just rely on common sense. And we're fighting the wokeness because, quite frankly, it departs from reality. And it's not something that a sane community would want to embrace. And I've said with all we've done, Stop Woke Act, standing up against the gender ideology, all this stuff, and fighting the woke corporations, that under my leadership, the state of Florida is where woke goes to die. So what I think we have to fight over the next 2 weeks is a sense of complacency. I think that they're trying to act like, don't even worry about the election, the governor's fine, all this other stuff. Don't fall into that trap. I mean, we have a mission that we have to accomplish here. I think sometimes, and maybe some of the new Floridians who kind of left some of these bad places, they may have an appreciation. Some of the people who've been here a while, they may take some of this for granted. If you had somebody making the opposite decisions of me, this state would look radically different and radically worse. That's just the reality. So just understand, your freedoms are much more fragile than I think any of us probably imagined even 4 or 5 years ago. Ronald Reagan used to say freedom is one generation away from extinction. It's not passed along in the bloodstream. And I've always liked that, but I've always also thought, I think our country's pretty free. I don't really see my freedom going away. And this is what I used to think. And yet we had situations in this country where governors were forcibly shuttering houses of worship while having liquor stores and strip clubs open. So we saw kids locked out of school for over a year. We saw people's entire livelihoods destroyed. So don't take it for granted. These are very difficult fights. The folks that want to oppose us really feel threatened by Florida's success. They would like nothing better than to derail us on our mission. And I think because we have really significant fights on our hands, when you're out there, it doesn't even matter. You could be a parent going to a school board meeting, you could be someone running for local office, or you could be the governor of the state. You don't get to stand up successfully for freedom unless you're willing to take some arrows and unless you're willing to sacrifice. That's just the reality. It's not always easy. When I was going, I mentioned the summer of 2020, The Democrats telling, oh, you got to shut down the state. They're saying that by us having the state open, somehow, we were committing all these really bad acts and everything, getting slimed by the media, smeared, all this other stuff. And I had friends of mine that are like, man, why don't you just do something, impose a mask mandate or do this or do that, because they're killing you and you need to take the heat off yourself. And I'm like, my job is to protect the jobs of the people that I represent. And that's not, and if it comes at the expense of putting my own job in jeopardy, then so be it. That is what leadership is all about. I'm not going to trim my sails. I'm not going to do what I don't think is right just to try to save my own political hide. So I was willing to take the arrows because I didn't want you to take the arrows. And that's just an example. Every time we stand up for people, we face opposition. I mean, it's gotten to the point I roll out of bed in the morning and the left has a spasm. I do anything and the media has a spasm. So it's just tough. So we got to be strong on our views and be strong on the right things. But I'll tell you, it's really, when you're going up against some of these turkeys on the other side, it ain't really that hard to get the policy right. I mean, they are so off base on so many things. Just use a little common sense and you're probably going to be okay. But you gotta match that with the courage of your convictions. You got to be willing to stand in front and center in that arena. You got to be willing to take the blows, and you got to be willing to do that without giving 1 inch. And that's what we've done in the state of Florida. And we've proven that to people. So you can know, as long as I'm at the helm, if there's something that's threatening your freedom or your livelihood and you need me to stand up for you, I'm going to be there for you. I have your back. You know that. You don't got to worry about being a fair weather friend here. In fact, I haven't done a poll. Some of these politicians, it's like finger in the wind on any different decision. I haven't taken a poll since I've been governor. I mean, I just do what I think is right and be true to myself. So what we need to do, we need to have the sense of urgency. You guys have all said, did everyone raise their hand and say they've either voted or are going to vote? Is there anyone that didn't raise your hand and say, okay, because if you're coming to this rally, you got to vote. I mean, that's kind of the point. But I need you guys to go out and do that, but I need you to rustle up support in your communities. Any of your friends, your family members, your neighbors, coworkers, employees, make sure that they know, hey, the governor needs your help. You got to come out and vote. And if you do that, I think we're going to really, really have a great night on November 8th. I think that it used to be that, you would do the results would come in and the panhandles open 1 hour more. And so Republicans would be losing, panhandle comes in, and then you can win, right? We'll see. We may be doing a little bit better coming in the panhandle this year. We'll see. We're working hard. But I think that you guys have the opportunity to put the exclamation point on our tenure as governor. And not only will it be great for the state of Florida, it will send a loud message, I think, across the country to other governors in our own party to say, you know what? Our governor did it right. He fought. He stood up for what was right. He didn't take crap from the media. He told it like it was, and the people of the state responded. And that's what we're going to be able to do. So I need your help to do that. I need you to be out there. You want to keep the state free, right? Your votes can be the ones to finally retire a very tired, worn-out old donkey, too. You guys can do it. You can stand up for parents' rights by coming out and making your voice heard. You can stand up for open businesses. You can stand up for all the things, law and order, strong borders, everything we've stood for. So I can tell you this, I'm excited about the next 2 weeks. I really look forward to November 8th. I am going to keep fighting the good fight. I am going to keep running the race, and I am going to keep the faith. and I need you to be there with me. So thank you for coming out. Thank you for your support. And our mission is very clear. Keep the state of Florida free.